A hungry dog searching for food in a city in the United States. As he was looking for food outside a store, the owner came down the stairs and chased him away. He put a bone in his mouth and ran away. While running, he collides with a man, and his bone is lost in the crowd. Then he sees a group of soldiers marching by. However, a soldier named Robert pets him and makes him eat cookies. The dog is so happy and started running after the soldiers. Here, a background voice tells how in 1917 the American army was also involved in the war in which the British and France were fighting against Germany. That is why all children received the necessary military training at that time. However, the scene changes to the present. We're shown that the army battalion has arrived at their camp and this dog goes in too, escaping all looks. The dog smelled the food and went straight to the kitchen. But the cook saw him and chased him away. As she runs away, she bumps into Robert again and begins searching him for food. Robert says he has nothing to give her, but the dog is still after him. The sergeant training them also noticed this incident and ordered Robert to give the dog something to eat after the training was complete. After training, Robert lets him into the dining room. Although the chef didn't want to feed him, now he has no alternative without feeding him. Robert's friends Olsen and Schroeder tell him that the sergeant is nice to animals, but if the colonel sees him, to chase him away. However, the next day we see all the soldiers doing their training and this dog also joins this parade and trains with the soldiers. The sergeant realizes that this dog is not afraid of shooting at all. He realizes that this dog is different from other dogs. That night, Robert named the dog Stubby and trained him. The next day the colonel comes to receive the soldiers. He notices that the dog greets him as well as Robert. He is very impressed to see this and gives Stubby permission to stay at the camp along with all the other soldiers. He quickly became everyone's favorite and could understand all the sergeant's orders. Finally, the day came when all the soldiers were sent out to fight. Their division is called the Yankee Division. The colonel greets all the soldiers and says that Stubby will stay and help train the next group. When Robert hears this, he gets very upset. He tells Stubby he'll be back soon after the war. He gives Stubby a tag and he really likes it. Robert then leaves him in the cook's care and prepares for battle by saying goodbye for the last time. Stubby doesn't like that at all. I missed Robert very much. Somehow he got free and started following the squad. He eventually made it to the train station while chasing them and boarded the train that was taking the troops to the port. When he arrives at the port, he sees Robert boarding a ship. He hid and got on the boat. He looks around for Robert, smells something, finally reaches Robert. Robert is surprised to see Stubby. I had no idea how Stubby got here. At that moment, Olsen reminds Robert that everyone who sees him here is in big trouble. So they all started looking for a place to hide Stubby. But suddenly the general of his unit appeared in front of them. At first glance, the general was a little mad at Stubby. He asks her about Stubby. When he sees Stubby greeting him and handing him the prone army baton, he is impressed. Seeing this, the general thinks that Stubby can be useful to them. He asks the colonel to make Stubby the official mascot of the Yankee Division. Schroeder then engraved his name on his label. However, they eventually made it onto the battlefield. You see that the condition of the British and French soldiers is pitiful. Suddenly the German army attacked them. Numerous American and French soldiers were injured. Here Stubby once again proves his intelligence by helping the army find the wounded combatants in the rubble and pull them out of the rubble. When he saw that, everyone in the army started liking Stubby. Meanwhile, Robert Gaston is introduced, a French soldier who was actually his partner. A good friendship soon developed between the two. Gaston takes them all to camp. On the way they see a destroyed city. Everything in this city was destroyed by the German army. Once at camp, Gaston makes sure they rest. The next day, the two went on patrol and hid in a place to keep an eye on the German soldiers. They learned that the German forces will attack them with a poison gas explosion. They ran back to camp to report the attack to the others. Here Stubby sees a German soldier with a gun ready to shoot Robert. Stubby pushes Robert at the right moment and saves his life. They realize that it is impossible for them to get out of there. Then Robert shows a mask and tells Stubby to tell the other soldiers. Stubby ran to camp, pulled out a mask and threw it in the air. All the soldiers put on their masks as soon as they understood his gesture. Meanwhile, German troops start detonating the poison bomb. Toxic gases covered the entire sky. There is a town nearby and that town could be affected by this toxic gas. So Stubby ran into town and started barking loudly. When they see him barking, They understand something bad is about to happen. At that moment, they see the whole sky full of poisonous gases. Everyone immediately put on masks, closed the doors and windows of their home, and locked themselves in. Then we see Robert and Gaston arriving in town. Robert picks Stubby up and takes him to a nearby building. Gaston covers his face with a damp cloth to protect him from these toxic gases. Soon the toxic gases will disappear and the sky will be clear again. It can be seen that all the people of the city are healthy and normal. Many lives were saved thanks to Stubby's intelligence. Everyone in town loves Stubby so much and says they think Stubby is a hero. When they return to the camp, they learn from the sergeant that one of his soldiers had been injured in the attack by German troops. However, your position is not tracked at all. When Stubby heard that, he immediately went in search of him. He finally caught up with him as he fled from the ammunition. Then Robert and Gaston come to help him. Meanwhile, the sergeant uses smoke bombs for his safety. In this way, they save the wounded soldiers and return to the camp. It was later revealed that his unit had to be moved to a new location. Everyone in the battalion is preparing for it. Before he leaves, a town girl gives Stubby a jacket made especially for him. Gaston also gives him a gas mask especially made for him. Then they said goodbye to everyone and left. In the next scene, the colonel informs them that they are now at the forward base and must now take part in the upcoming battle against the German forces. In the following scenes, we see some scenes of his fight with the German forces. We see that Stubby cleverly allowed himself to be followed by some German soldiers and handed them over to his team. In the next scene, we see that Stubby wanted to save Olsen from a bomb blast, but he himself was injured. His legs hurt a lot. Robert rushes back to camp and takes it with him. There, a doctor sends Stubby to the hospital with Olsen, who is also injured. The scene then switches to Robert missing Stubby so much he can't focus on the battlefield. At the same time, one day, the sergeant ordered Gaston to return to the French army. Robert says Gaston goodbye with a heavy heart. When Robert writes to his sister, we learn that he has not heard from Stubby for weeks, and that he misses him very much. In the next scene, we see that Robert has deadly flu and is seriously ill. The camp doctor says his chances of survival are very slim. Meanwhile, we see Stubby at the city hospital. His legs are still not fully healed, but he sets off on his own to find Robert. I had a hard time walking with a broken leg. Eventually, he fell to the ground, but he didn't give up and kept going. In the next scene, we see that Stubby finally made it to Robert's camp. And upon seeing him, Robert regains his vitality and recovers very quickly. However, the soldiers now have a few days off. Robert gets a chance and takes Stubby on a tour of Paris. All the people there respect and love Stubby very much. Robert and Stubby had a great time together. However, the scene switched back to the battlefield. We see Stubby using his intelligence to help his army arrest a German spy. The general is pleased with Stubby's performance and announces in front of everyone that Stubby will be promoted to sergeant starting today. Robert was promoted, but it is known that Stubby is now Robert's senior in rank. Gaston also came here to cheer them up. After that, everyone in Yankee Division took photos together. All the major newspapers cover the Stubby news, and so Stubby became a national hero. In the next scene, we see Stubby leading a tank battalion. Robert was much happier for Stubby. This time the American and French armies attacked the German forces as best they could, forcing them to retreat. Everyone was surprised to see the strong bunkers of the German army. But then a soldier came running and told them that the war was over. The sergeant also confirms the authenticity of this message. He announces that the battle is coming to an end and that the armistice will take place at 11 a.m. tomorrow. After a long time, everyone is feeling a little more relaxed tonight because it's finally time for them to return home. At 9 a.m. the next day, fierce fighting broke out between the remaining troops, in which they attempted to further push the enemy back. Here Robert sees Gaston advancing alone on the enemy. After following Gaston, he sees that he is surrounded by 2 German soldiers. Robert and Stubby come immediately to help him. But before anyone could attack, a truce siren suddenly sounded and all the soldiers dropped their weapons. Robert saw that it was 11 o'clock, so it was time for her to return home. Then they start searching for their injured comrades. Once Stubby finds Olsen's hat there, Schroeder understands that Olsen is no longer alive. Together they pay their respects to Olsen. Everyone says goodbye and the Yankee unit goes home. Within a few days his ship reached the port, where all the boys are waiting for Stubby and the rest of the crew. We see that Stubby is treated with the same respect as a sergeant. Here a photographer clicks on a photo of him, which is still kept as a memento of this intrepid sergeant hound. And here ends this beautiful film.